My name is Natalie Richards, and at 22 years old, I thought graduating with honors from UC Berkeley would be the proudest day of my life. Instead, it became the day my father publicly disowned me in front of everyone I knew. What he didn't expect was that I'd been carrying his darkest secret for years, and I finally had nothing left to lose by revealing it. Before I dive into the most painful day of my life, let me know where you're watching from and hit that like and subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for when I finally stood up to the man who never believed in me. Growing up in suburban Chicago with my father Matthew was like living under a microscope that could never quite focus properly. No matter what I achieved, the image was always slightly blurry in his eyes, never sharp enough to merit true recognition. Our two-story colonial house, with its perfectly manicured lawn and gleaming windows, mirrored the flawless image my father worked tirelessly to project to the world. Matthew Richards was not just my father, he was an institution. Standing 6'2", with salt and pepper hair that never dared fall out of place, he commanded every room with the same authority he commanded our family. His voice rarely raised above a certain decibel. It didn't need to. A slight adjustment in his tone could silence our entire dinner table faster than a judge's gavel. As the CFO of a respected financial firm in downtown Chicago, my father believed success had a very specific definition, one that involved Harvard Business School, his alma mater, seven-figure bonuses, and the respect of men in similar suits with similar watches and similar worldviews. There was no room for deviation in the Richards family success manual. My mother Diana existed in his shadow, her once vibrant personality dimmed over 25 years of marriage to become a reflection of his preferences. She had been an art history major with dreams of curating museum collections, but had instead become the curator of our family's social calendar and my father's impeccable image. I would sometimes catch glimpses of who she used to be. When she would sneak me to art exhibitions while my father was on business trips, her eyes lighting up in a way they never did at home. "Your father means well," became her mantra, whispered to me after particularly harsh criticisms of my report cards. An A- in calculus was treated like a moral failing, or my choice of extracurricular activities. Debate team was acceptable, theater club was not. My brothers James and Tyler, 4 and 2 years older than me respectively, had long since surrendered to the Richards family path. James, the perfect firstborn, mirrored my father in every way, from his choice of business major at Northwestern to his penchant for crisp button-down shirts and disapproving glances. Tyler had shown brief flashes of rebellion, a semester studying abroad in Spain that almost turned into a gap year until my father flew there personally to course correct. Before ultimately joining my father's firm after graduating from University of Chicago's business school, I was different from the beginning. While my brothers played stock market simulators with our father on weekends, I buried myself in books about the Supreme Court and civil rights movements. The dinner table became a battleground when I was in high school, with heated discussions that always ended the same way. My father dismissing my idealistic notions, while my mother nervously rearranged her food. "The law is for people who couldn't cut it in finance," he would say, cutting his steak with precision. "It's reactive, not proactive. You wait for problems instead of preventing them." The irony of that statement would only become clear to me years later. My academic achievements piled up throughout high school: debate team captain, national merit scholar, perfect SAT scores. But they were always slightly wrong in my father's eyes. "Imagine what you could do if you applied this intelligence to something practical," he would say, transforming accomplishments into missed opportunities. The breaking point came during my senior year when college acceptance letters arrived. I had applied to business programs to appease him, but also to law tracks at several universities. The day my Berkeley acceptance arrived, with a substantial scholarship, was the day I decided to chart my own course. I still remember the family meeting I called, hands trembling but voice steady as I announced my decision to study pre-law at Berkeley. My mother's eyes widened with a mixture of pride and terror. James scoffed. Tyler looked at his shoes. My father's reaction was ice-cold calculation. "Berkeley," he said the word like it tasted bitter. "California. Pre-law." Each phrase dropped into the silence of our dining room like stones into a still pond. "I see. What followed was not the explosion I expected, but something far more devastating. "I've allocated funds for your education based on certain expectations," he said, his tone the same as when he discussed investment portfolios. "Those funds were earmarked for a proper business education that would secure your future. If you choose this other path, you do so without my financial support. You're cutting me off because I want to study law instead of business?" My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. "I'm reallocating resources where they'll provide better returns," he corrected, as though this wasn't about his daughter, but a disappointing stock. "The choice is yours, Natalie." My mother tried to intervene, her voice small. "Matthew, surely we can. The decision is made, Diana." He cut her off without even looking her way. That night, my mother slipped into my room as I furiously researched student loans and additional scholarship opportunities. "He'll come around," she whispered, though her eyes said otherwise. She pressed an envelope into my hands. "It's not much, just what I've saved from my personal account. He doesn't know." Inside was $5,000, the first installment of my independence, and the first crack in my perception of my parents' unified front. 2 months later, I left for California with 2 suitcases, my mother's hidden financial contribution, and a determination to succeed that burned hotter than any approval my father had ever withheld. Landing in San Francisco with nothing but ambition and anxiety was both terrifying and exhilarating. The campus at Berkeley buzzed with an energy so different from the buttoned-up Chicago suburbs I'd left behind. People here debated ideas passionately, without the conversation ending in silent treatment. Professors encouraged questioning the status quo rather than preserving it. For the first time, I felt like I could breathe fully. But freedom came with a steep price tag. My scholarship covered tuition but little else. The $5,000 from my mother disappeared quickly into security deposits, textbooks, and basic necessities. While my former high school classmates posted pictures of parent-funded spring breaks, I juggled 3 jobs: morning shifts at a campus coffee shop, evening hours at the library, and weekend work as a research assistant for a law professor. My tiny shared apartment in a rundown building became my sanctuary and prison. Many nights I fell asleep at my desk, waking up with textbook page imprints on my cheek and 3 hours to prepare for my next class. My roommate Stephanie, a sociology major from Seattle, would drape blankets over me when she found me like this, leaving encouraging sticky notes on my forehead. "You know, most people use beds," she joked one morning, sliding a cup of coffee toward me as I peeled a yellow post-it from my face. Revolutionary concept. Stephanie became the first member of my chosen family. Rachel joined our circle next, a fierce environmental science major who organized campus protests and taught me that passion didn't have to be quiet and contained as I'd been raised to believe. Marcus, with his computer science brilliance and unexpected love of constitutional law debates, rounded out our core group. None of them understood family pressure the way I did, but they understood something equally important: how to support someone who was figuring out who they were beyond family expectations. "Blood doesn't define family," Rachel would say during our late-night study sessions when I'd receive particularly cold emails from my father inquiring about my grades with no other personal content. "Actions do." Those words became my mantra through 4 years of minimal contact with my father. My mother called weekly, her voice always dropping to a whisper at some point to ask if I needed anything, though we both knew her resources were limited. My brother Tyler occasionally texted, sending awkward but well-meaning check-ins that never mentioned our father. James remained my father's shadow, reaching out only on birthdays with formal messages that read like business correspondence. Professor Eleanor Williams became another pivotal figure in my college journey. A brilliant constitutional law expert with a reputation for being demanding but fair, she became the mentor I'd always craved. After grilling me relentlessly during a first-year seminar, she asked me to stay after class. "You argue like someone who's been defending themselves their whole life," she observed, leaning against her desk. "That's not a criticism. It's a strength if you channel it properly." Under her guidance, I developed from a student desperately trying to prove myself into a scholar confident in my own analysis. By junior year, She recommended me for an internship at Goldstein and Parker, a prestigious law firm specializing in corporate accountability cases. The irony of focusing on holding businesses accountable for ethical breaches wasn't lost on me, though I kept my personal motivations private. The internship became a turning point. Working alongside attorneys who used their business knowledge to fight corruption rather than benefit from it showed me an alternative path my father had never acknowledged. My supervisor, Laura Goldstein herself, took note of my dedication. "Richards," she said one evening as we prepared for a major case, "you have the unique ability to understand how these corporations think while still maintaining your moral compass. That's rare. We need more lawyers like you." Her words validated the path I'd chosen in a way no grade or award ever could. By senior year, I had risen to the top of my class, become president of the Pre-Law Society, and secured early acceptance to 3 top law schools, including Yale, my dream. The cost had been steep. I was perpetually exhausted, working constantly, and had watched my bank account hover near zero more times than I could count, but I was making it happen. As graduation approached, I sent formal invitations to my family more out of obligation than expectation. 3 weeks before the ceremony, I received a brief email from my mother. "Natalie, we won't be able to attend your graduation. Your father has an important client meeting that weekend that can't be rescheduled. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I'm very proud of you. Love, Mom." The disappointment stung, but didn't surprise me. I'd learned to manage my expectations when it came to family support. My friends rallied around me, creating elaborate plans for a celebration that would make up for my family's absence. "We'll be so loud when they call your name that you won't even notice they're not there," Rachel promised, already planning matching t-shirts for our group to wear. I convinced myself I was at peace with their absence. Maybe it was better this way. No tension, no disapproving glances, just pure celebration with people who had actually supported me through the journey. I would graduate on my own terms, just as I had completed my education. What I didn't know was that fate had a different ceremony in store, one that would permanently alter the Richards family dynamic in ways none of us could have predicted. Graduation morning dawned with perfect Berkeley weather, sunny, with just enough breeze to keep the graduation gowns from becoming unbearable. Stephanie woke me by bouncing on my bed, already dressed in her cap and gown. "Rise and shine, future Supreme Court Justice," she announced, throwing open our curtains with theatrical flair. "Today we become educated adults, officially qualified to be in debt for the next decade." Rachel arrived moments later with bagels and custom shirts for our post-ceremony celebration. Marcus followed with his parents, who had insisted on adopting me for the day and had brought flowers and a card that made me tear up before I'd even brushed my teeth. "None of that," Marcus's mother June scolded gently, dabbing at my eyes. "You'll ruin your makeup, and we need you looking fierce for all these photos we're going to take." We arrived at the ceremony venue early, joining the organized chaos of graduates finding their places and adjusting each other's caps. My friends' families fussed over all of us equally, straightening tassels and taking countless photos. The hollow ache I'd expected to feel at my family's absence was filled with their genuine warmth and excitement. As we lined up for the procession, I scanned the assembling audience out of habit, not expecting to see any familiar faces beyond our friend group. That's when I saw them, 4 rows back on the left side. My father, ramrod straight in an expensive suit that looked out of place among the more casual California crowd. My mother beside him, clutching her purse with white knuckles. James and Tyler flanking them like bookends. My heart lurched so violently, I nearly lost my balance. Rachel caught my elbow. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." "They're here," I whispered, unable to tear my gaze away. "My family. They came after all." Rachel followed my gaze, her expression hardening slightly. She'd heard enough stories over 4 years to form her own opinions about my father. "Well," she said finally, squeezing my hand, "now they get to see what they almost missed." The ceremony passed in a blur. When they called, "Natalie Richards, summa cum laude," my friends cheered wildly as promised. From my position on stage, I could see my mother clapping enthusiastically, Tyler joining in with genuine smiles. James offered restrained applause. My father's hands came together exactly 3 times, the minimum requirement of acknowledgement. Still, they had come. That had to mean something. After the ceremony, I navigated through the crowd toward them, my pulse racing with a confused mixture of hope and dread. My mother reached me first, pulling me into a perfume-scented embrace. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered fiercely.
So proud.
Tyler gave me an awkward but sincere hug. "Nice job, sis. Berkeley looks good on you." James offered a stiff handshake. "Congratulations on your achievement." My father remained slightly apart, evaluating me as though I were a balance sheet with concerning numbers. "Natalie," he said finally, extending his hand formally. "Congratulations." I shook it, feeling the familiar distance despite our physical proximity. "Thank you for coming. I thought you had an important meeting." "Plans change," he replied cryptically. Before the conversation could become more strained, Stephanie bounded over with her family, followed by Rachel, Marcus, and his parents. Introductions were made, with my friends' families filling the awkward gaps with cheerful chatter about the ceremony and plans for celebration. "We've made lunch reservations for everyone at Bayside Restaurant," Marcus's father announced. "Our treat. We're celebrating all these amazing graduates." My father's jaw tightened at being included in someone else's plans, but my mother jumped in quickly. "How thoughtful. We'd be delighted." The restaurant gathering was an exercise in contrasting worlds. My California life collided with my Chicago past as conversations about law school plans and campus memories mixed uncomfortably with my father's probing questions about starting salaries and firm rankings. While my friends' parents spoke about their children with unabashed pride, my father found ways to turn each of my accomplishments into a question. "Yale Law School has accepted you? Interesting choice. I would have thought Harvard would align better with serious career objectives." "Constitutional law focus? Rather abstract when corporate law offers more substantial opportunities." "Student body president? Administrative experience is valuable, though I wonder if your time might have been better spent on judicial internships." With each comment, my friends exchanged glances, and their parents became increasingly bewildered by my father's inability to simply celebrate his daughter's achievements. My mother attempted to redirect conversations while my brothers looked increasingly uncomfortable. As lunch progressed, Tyler made a genuine effort to connect, asking about my favorite classes and experiences in California. When I mentioned Professor Williams and her mentorship, he seemed genuinely interested. "She sounds amazing," he said. "You always did need strong teachers who challenged you." My father cut in before I could respond. "What Natalie has always needed is practical guidance." These academic mentors fill students' heads with idealistic notions that don't translate to the real world. The table fell awkwardly silent. Marcus's mother, June, who had been nothing but warm all day, finally spoke up. "Well, from what we've seen, your daughter has a remarkable ability to translate her education into practical skills. Her work with that corporate accountability firm was quite impressive." My father's eyebrows raised slightly. "Corporate accountability? What exactly does that entail?" The tone in his voice made my stomach tighten. We were approaching dangerous territory. "We investigate corporate fraud and represent whistleblowers," I explained carefully. "The firm specializes in cases where companies have misled investors or engaged in financial misconduct." Something flickered across my father's face, so quickly I might have missed it if I hadn't spent a lifetime studying his expressions for signs of approval or disapproval. "Sounds like glorified tattling," he said dismissively. "The business world requires discretion and loyalty." "I think it requires ethics and transparency," I countered before I could stop myself. The temperature at the table seemed to drop 10 degrees. My mother's hand flew to her necklace, her nervous tell. James shifted uncomfortably, while Tyler studied his water glass with sudden fascination. We managed to navigate through the rest of lunch with superficial conversation, but the tension remained palpable. As we prepared to leave for the afternoon graduation reception on campus, my father announced he had made dinner reservations for just our family at Laurel Heights, the most expensive restaurant in Berkeley. "We need family time," he stated in a tone that brooked no argument. 7 o'clock. My friends looked concerned, but I assured them I would meet up with them afterward for our planned celebration. As we parted ways, Rachel squeezed my arm. "Text us if you need an emergency rescue," she whispered. "We can fake a crisis in 10 minutes flat." I laughed, but part of me wondered if I might need exactly that before the night was over. Laurel Heights restaurant exuded old-world luxury, all polished wood, crystal glasses, and hushed conversations. My father had reserved a table in the main dining room rather than a private space, which surprised me given his usual preference for privacy. The restaurant was filled with other graduation parties, families beaming with pride as they toasted their graduates. The contrast with our table couldn't have been more stark. My father ordered an expensive bottle of wine without consulting anyone's preferences, then spent the first 20 minutes of dinner interrogating me about my decision to accept Yale's offer over other law schools. "New Haven," he said with thinly veiled distaste. "Another 4 years away from Chicago. One might think you're deliberately choosing locations based on their distance from family." "I'm choosing based on the quality of education and career opportunities," I replied evenly, determined not to let him provoke me on what should have been a celebratory day. "Yale does have an excellent reputation," my mother offered tentatively. My father continued, as if she hadn't spoken. "And your focus on constitutional law, what exactly do you plan to do with that? Spend your career arguing theoretical points while making a public defender's salary?" Tyler attempted to deflect. "Dad, Natalie just graduated summa cum laude from Berkeley. Maybe we could just celebrate that tonight?" "I'm simply trying to understand the return on investment here," my father replied, swirling his wine with precision. 4 years of education should lead to tangible outcomes." "My education isn't a stock portfolio," I said, feeling heat rise in my cheeks despite my determination to remain calm. "Its value isn't measured only in dollars." James, ever the peacemaker when it served his interests, jumped in. "How's your roommate Stephanie handling job hunting?" "Finance, wasn't it?" "Environmental science," I corrected. "And she's already accepted a position with the Climate Research Institute." My father scoffed. "Another idealist. You certainly found your people out here." With each passing minute, the tension mounted. Nearby tables were celebrating with champagne toasts and warm speeches, while our conversation grew increasingly strained. A family at the next table had just presented their graduate with a new car key, everyone laughing and taking photos. "Now that's a practical graduation gift," my father remarked pointedly. "Useful for entering the real world." "I don't need a car in New Haven," I said. "The campus is walkable." "That wasn't my point, Natalie," he replied coldly. The waiter arrived with our entrees, providing a momentary reprieve. As we began eating, my mother made a valiant attempt to change the subject, asking about my favorite Berkeley experiences. I started describing my work with the legal aid clinic, explaining how we'd helped low-income residents with housing disputes. "We managed to prevent 3 evictions last semester by pro bono work," my father interrupted, cutting his steak with surgical precision. "Noble but ultimately unsustainable. The legal profession isn't charity work. Some of us believe in using our skills to help others, not just enrich ourselves," I replied, my patience finally beginning to fray. His knife paused mid-cut. "And what exactly are you implying about my career, Natalie?" "I'm not implying anything about your career, Dad. I'm stating facts about mine." The table fell silent. My mother looked terrified. Tyler stared at his plate while James watched our father's reaction carefully. "Your career," my father said finally, placing his silverware down with deliberate care, "hasn't even begun. Yet you speak with such certainty about your path, despite having virtually no real-world experience." "I have 4 years of internships, clinical work, and research," I countered. "Just because it's not in finance doesn't make it invalid." 4 years of playing at being a lawyer," he dismissed. "Let me tell you what I see. I see a young woman who had every advantage, every opportunity to excel in a field with proven success, and who chose instead to waste her potential on idealistic crusades." The restaurant seemed to quiet around us, or perhaps it was just the blood rushing in my ears that dampened other sounds. "Matthew," my mother whispered urgently, "not here." He ignored her, his focus entirely on me. Do you know what it looks like to colleagues when they ask about my daughter, and I have to explain that she's chosen to become a professional antagonist to the very business world that provided her privileges? I didn't have privileges, I said, my voice rising slightly despite my efforts to control it. You cut me off, remember? I worked 3 jobs to get through college. I earned every single thing I have. With an education funded by my years of hard work building our family's reputation and resources, he countered. My scholarship funded my education, I corrected. My jobs paid for everything else. He laughed, a short, dismissive sound that cut deeper than any criticism. You truly believe you did this all yourself? That the Richards name had nothing to do with your opportunities? Your naivety is exactly why you're not ready for the real world. Nearby tables had grown quieter, the diners trying to pretend they weren't listening to our increasingly heated exchange. Dad, Tyler attempted to intervene. Maybe we should. No, my father cut him off sharply. It's time for some honesty here. Natalie has chosen to reject everything this family stands for, our values, our career paths, even our geographic location. That's her choice. But choices have consequences. He turned his cold gaze back to me. If you insist on pursuing this path, investigating corporations and undermining the business world, then you do so completely on your own. Not with my support, not with my connections, and not with my name. The restaurant had grown so quiet I could hear the clink of glassware from the bar across the room. Are you seriously disowning me at my graduation dinner? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I'm simply clarifying the terms of our relationship moving forward, he replied as if discussing a business contract. You've made it abundantly clear you don't respect what I've built or the wisdom I've tried to impart.
So be it.
Consider yourself independent in all respects. My mother gasped. Matthew, please, stay out of this, Diana, he snapped without looking at her. You can't be serious, Tyler interjected. Dad, this is insane. It's her graduation day. Which makes it the perfect time to establish clear boundaries before she embarks on her chosen path, my father replied coolly. Natalie wants independence. Now she has it completely. The humiliation burned through me like acid. All around us, other families were witnessing what should have been a private family matter, if it should have happened at all. My graduation day, which I'd worked so hard for, was being deliberately destroyed by the man who should have been proudest of me. In that moment, something shifted inside me. For years of independence had taught me my own strength. For years of building relationships with people who actually supported me had shown me what real family should look like. And 4 years of studying justice had convinced me that some truths needed to be spoken. The secret I'd carried since high school, the document I discovered in my father's home office that had first pushed me towards studying law, suddenly felt less like a burden and more like a shield. I straightened my shoulders and looked directly into my father's eyes. If that's how you want to play this, I said, my voice steadier than I felt, then I think it's time everyone heard the real reason I chose corporate accountability law. The shift in my tone must have registered with my father. Something flashed in his eyes, uncertainty, perhaps even fear, an expression I'd never seen there before. This isn't the place for your dramatics, Natalie, he said, his voice lowering with warning. You made it the place when you decided to publicly disown me, I replied, keeping my voice calm and measured. You wanted to do this here, in front of everyone. So, let's be completely honest. My mother reached across the table, her fingers trembling. Natalie, please. It's okay, Mom, I said gently. I'm not angry anymore. I just think it's time for the truth. I turned back to my father, whose face had hardened into an unreadable mask. Around us, other diners had abandoned all pretense of not listening, their own celebrations temporarily forgotten. When I was 17, I began. I was looking for a stapler in your home office. You were in London on business, and Mom was at her charity luncheon. Remember how you always kept your desk so meticulously organized? Everything in its place. My father's jaw tightened, but he remained silent. I accidentally knocked over that leather file box you kept locked, except that day, it wasn't locked. The contents spilled everywhere, and as I was gathering the papers, I noticed something strange. Financial documents from your firm, Westridge Capital Partners, but with inconsistencies I couldn't understand at first. James shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Natalie, whatever you think you found. Invoices for consulting services that didn't exist. I continued steadily. Balance sheets with discrepancies in the millions. And most interestingly, documents detailing settlements with 3 families, the Morrisons, the Guzmans, and the Taylors. The color had begun to drain from my father's face. I didn't understand everything then, I admitted. But I understood enough to know something was very wrong. I photographed those documents before putting them back exactly as I found them. When you came home and found me suddenly interested in business ethics and corporate law, you thought it was just a phase. I looked directly at my brothers. Did you ever wonder why Dad was so adamant about keeping me away from corporate law specifically? Why he was so threatened by my interest in financial crimes? Tyler's expression showed dawning comprehension while James looked away, unable to meet my eyes. You've been investigating me, my father accused, his voice dangerously low.
No, y correcta.
I've been understanding you. Understanding why you built our family on the appearance of perfection while hiding what really paid for it. Those 3 families lost nearly everything because of investment advice you gave them, advice you knew was fraudulent. You directed them into holdings your firm needed to offload before the 2008 crash. The restaurant had gone completely silent now, every ear tuned to our table. You have no idea what you're talking about, my father hissed, but his typical confidence had faltered. The settlements you paid included non-disclosure agreements, I continued. That's why none of them ever spoke publicly about how Westridge Capital Partners, how you specifically betrayed their trust. Mr. Morrison had a heart attack from the stress. The Guzman's daughter had to drop out of college. The Taylors lost their home. My mother's face had crumpled, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. Natalie, please stop. You knew, I realized, seeing her reaction. You knew all along. She couldn't meet my eyes. Those settlements, I said, turning back to my father, conveniently paid out just before James and Tyler started college. Their education was funded by the financial destruction of 3 families who trusted you. James stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. I'm not listening to this anymore. Sit down, my father commanded, and James obeyed automatically, the trained response of years. My father leaned forward, his voice barely audible. You have no proof of anything. Those were legitimate settlements for investment losses, standard practice in volatile markets. The documents I found detailed intentional misrepresentation, I replied. And they included internal communications about moving those clients into doomed investments to protect the firm's preferred clients. That's fraud, Dad. That's why you were so desperate to keep me away from corporate law. You were afraid I'd connect the dots. Tyler looked stunned. Dad, is this true? Of course not, my father snapped, but the conviction in his voice had weakened. It's why I chose Berkeley, I continued. Not just to get away from you, but because it has one of the best corporate accountability programs in the country. It's why I interned at Goldstein and Parker, which specializes in exactly these types of cases. And it's why I'm going to Yale, to study under Professor Harrington, who literally wrote the book on prosecuting financial fraud. The realization of how deliberately I'd constructed my education hit my father visibly. His face, normally composed regardless of circumstances, showed genuine alarm. You wouldn't, he breathed. I'm not threatening you, I clarified. I'm explaining why I chose my path. I wanted to understand how someone could do what you did, how my own father could justify causing so much harm while presenting himself as the paragon of business ethics. I wanted to make sure I never became like that. My mother's quiet sobs provided a soundtrack to the moment as decades of family mythology crumbled around us. Nearby diners were openly staring now, some whispering to each other, others typing on their phones. These are dangerous accusations, my father said, his businessman's mask reasserting itself. Accusations that could be considered defamatory. Truth is an absolute defense against defamation, I replied, my law education serving me well. And we both know what I'm saying is true. I stood up, placing my napkin beside my barely touched meal. You asked me to be independent, Dad. To forge my own path completely separate from you. I accept those terms. But understand this, my choice to study corporate accountability isn't rebellion. It's redemption. If the Richards name is going to mean something in the future, I want it to stand for justice, not profit at any cost. I looked at my mother and brothers. I love you all. When you're ready to talk, really talk, about our family and move forward honestly, I'll be there. But I won't participate in the fiction anymore. With that, I walked away from the table, past the staring diners, through the restaurant's ornate doors, and into the cool Berkeley evening. My hands were shaking, but my steps were steady. Behind me, I could hear the commotion as my father demanded the check, and my mother called my name. I didn't look back. For years ago, I'd left Chicago with nothing but determination and hidden pain. Tonight, I was leaving that restaurant having finally set down the heaviest burden I'd carried, the truth I'd protected not to shield my father, but to preserve what little family connection I had left. As I pulled out my phone to text my friends, I felt lighter than I had in years. The secret was out. Whatever came next, it would be built on truth, not carefully constructed illusions. My phone buzzed with texts before I'd even made it back to my apartment. Rachel, Stephanie, and Marcus had created a group chat titled Emergency Response Team and were coordinating their arrival at my place with ice cream and alcohol. I smiled despite the emotional turmoil churning inside me. This was what real support looked like. I'd barely unlocked my door when my phone rang with my mother's caller ID. I hesitated before answering. Natalie. Her voice sounded raw from crying. Where are you? Are you safe? I'm fine, Mom, I assured her, sinking onto my bed. I'm at my apartment. Your father is... She paused, struggling for words. He's not in a good place right now. I imagine not, I replied, feeling strangely calm in the aftermath of the storm. Where are you? At the hotel. Your brothers are here too. Your father went for a walk to clear his head. The way she said it made me think clear his head was a euphemism for something more volatile. Mom, I said gently, did you know? About the settlements? About what really happened? Her silence answered before her words did. I knew there were problems at the firm. I knew there were settlements. Matthew said it was standard practice, that all investment firms had occasional losses they needed to address. But you suspected it was more, I pressed. A heavy sigh came through the line. There were signs. Things he said when he thought I wasn't listening. The timing of certain trips. How stressed he was during that period. Her voice dropped to a whisper. He changed after that time. Became harder, more controlling, especially with you children. Why didn't you say anything? What would you have had me say, Natalie? Accuse your father of fraud without proof? Destroy our family based on suspicions? You don't understand what it's like to balance these kinds of impossible choices. But I did understand, more than she knew. I'd been balancing my own impossible choice for years, family loyalty against my moral compass. What happens now? I asked. I don't know, she admitted, and the uncertainty in her voice told me more about how dramatically things had shifted than any explanation could have. Diana Richards, who had planned every family event with military precision for 25 years, had no script for this scenario. A knock at my door signaled my friend's arrival. Mom, I need to go. We can talk more tomorrow. Natalie, please. Desperation edged into her voice. Don't do anything with this information. Don't go to authorities or journalists. Give us time to figure this out as a family. The request hung between us, the familiar pattern of covering up uncomfortable truths to maintain appearances. I'm not planning to do anything right now, I said carefully. But I won't lie if directly asked, and I won't pretend it didn't happen. That's the best I can offer. She seemed to accept this compromise, at least temporarily. I love you, Natalie. Despite everything, please know that. After hanging up, I opened the door to find my friends armed with Ben and Jerry's, tequila, and concerned expressions. They filed in silently, setting up an impromptu comfort station on my small coffee table. So, Rachel said, handing me a spoon, on a scale of 1 to complete disaster, how bad was the family dinner? I laughed despite myself. Let's just say I won't be invited to any Richards family gatherings for the foreseeable future. Over ice cream and shots, I recounted the evening's events. My friends listened without interruption, their expressions cycling through shock, outrage, and pride. "Holy shit," Stephanie whispered when I finished. "You actually did it." You stood up to him. Marcus shook his head in amazement. "I always knew you were badass, but that's next-level courage. Or next-level stupidity," I countered, the adrenaline finally wearing off enough for doubt to creep in. "I just blew up my entire family in a public restaurant." "No," Rachel said firmly, taking my hand. "Your father blew up your family when he decided to disown you at your graduation dinner. You just refused to be the only casualty." We stayed up until 3 a.m., analyzing every moment of the confrontation, speculating about repercussions, and eventually transitioning to silly graduation memories as the alcohol softened the evening's sharp edges. When they finally left, promising to check on me in the morning, I lay awake staring at my ceiling, too wired to sleep despite my exhaustion. My phone lit up with a text at 4:23 a.m. "Tyler, is it true? All of it?" I typed back immediately. "Yes. I have copies of everything." Threads appeared, disappeared, then reappeared several times before his response came through. I always wondered where the money for James's Harvard tuition suddenly came from. Dad said it was a bonus. "I need time to process this." "Take all the time you need," I replied. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry about tonight. You deserved better. Congratulations on graduating." Tears pricked my eyes at this small kindness.
Thank you, Ty.
Morning brought a flood of messages, some from extended family who had somehow already heard versions of the restaurant confrontation, others from friends checking in. Most surprisingly, there was an email from Professor Williams with a subject line, "Proud of you," containing just one line: "Standing up for truth is never easy, but always right. My office door is open if you need to talk." I wondered how she had heard, but then remembered the small academic and legal world I inhabited. News traveled fast, especially scandalous news involving prominent financial figures. My mother called again around noon, her voice tense. "Your father is flying back to Chicago today. James is going with him. Tyler and I are staying another day."
"Why?"
I asked, surprised by this development. "Tyler wants to talk to you," she explained. "And so do I. Properly, not over the phone. Can we meet for coffee this afternoon?" We arranged to meet at a quiet cafe far from campus, where we'd be unlikely to encounter anyone I knew. When I arrived, my mother and Tyler were already seated in a corner booth, both looking like they hadn't slept. My mother embraced me tightly before we sat down, her familiar perfume bringing an unexpected wave of emotion. Tyler gave me an awkward side hug, his expression a mixture of confusion and concern. "Your father is consulting with the firm's legal team," my mother began without preamble. "He's concerned about potential implications of what was said last night. Is he denying it?" I asked. Tyler and my mother exchanged glances. "Not to us," Tyler admitted. "When we got back to the hotel, he tried at first, but when I pressed him, he trailed off, shaking his head. He said I didn't understand the pressures of the financial crisis, that sometimes difficult decisions had to be made to protect the majority of clients." Classic rationalization, I noted. "He's afraid you're going to go public with this," my mother said. "Or take legal action." I meant what I said last night. I didn't collect that information to expose or blackmail him. I needed to understand why he was the way he was, why our family functioned the way it did. "But you could," Tyler pointed out. "Go public, I mean, you have the evidence." I sighed, stirring my untouched coffee. What would that accomplish now? The statute of limitations has passed on most of it. The settlements ensured the affected families can't speak out. It would destroy his career and reputation, affect the firm's other employees and clients, and for what? Justice that's a decade too late. My mother looked relieved, but Tyler seemed troubled. "So, he just gets away with it? With all of it? What he did to those families, how he's treated you, last night's public humiliation." I didn't say that. I clarified. I said I'm not planning to expose him publicly or legally, but our relationship has fundamentally changed. I won't pretend it didn't happen, and I won't accept being treated the way he's treated me my entire life. My mother reached for my hand. He does love you, Natalie. In his way. His way isn't good enough anymore, I said gently but firmly. Love doesn't come with conditions or ultimatums. We talked for nearly 3 hours. My mother revealed more details about their marriage than I'd ever known. How she'd slowly surrendered pieces of herself to maintain peace. How she'd convinced herself that protecting our family's image was protecting us. Tyler shared his own struggles with our father's expectations and his growing disillusionment with his job at the firm. I don't even know if I want to go back, he admitted. Everything feels tainted now. As we prepared to leave, my mother hesitated. James is angry with you. He thinks you've betrayed the family. James has always been Dad's echo, I said. He needs time to find his own voice, just like we all do. She nodded sadly. We're flying back tomorrow morning. Will you be all right? I'll be better than all right, I assured her. I have good friends, exciting plans, and for the first time, I feel like I can move forward without carrying secrets that were never mine to keep. That evening, as I packed my apartment for my upcoming move, my phone exploded with notifications. An email from James, subject line, "How could you?" remained unopened. A text from a number I didn't recognize turned out to be from a journalist at the Chicago Tribune, interested in discussing allegations about Westridge Capital Partners. Emails from distant relatives expressing concern about troubling rumors. The news was spreading faster than I'd anticipated. I turned off my phone and continued packing, determined to focus on my future rather than the past that was unraveling behind me. Later that night, a gentle knock at my door revealed Stephanie, looking uncharacteristically serious. "You need to see this," she said, holding out her phone. On the screen was a business news website with the headline, "Westridge Capital Partners announces restructuring. Matthew Richards steps down as CFO, citing family priorities." The speed of the response told me everything about how seriously my father had taken the threat of exposure. He was cutting his losses, controlling the narrative before anyone else could. "Are you okay?" Stephanie asked. I considered the question carefully. "Yeah," I said finally. "I think I actually am." 3 months passed in a blur of change. I moved into a small but sunny apartment in New Haven, close enough to Yale Law School to walk, but far enough to feel separate from campus. The space was entirely mine, no roommates for the first time, funded by a combination of scholarships, loans, and a research position I'd secured with Professor Harrington before classes even began. My friends from Berkeley had helped me move, turning the process into an adventure rather than a chore. Rachel had decorated my refrigerator with ridiculous magnets, each representing an inside joke from our 4 years together. Stephanie had insisted on arranging my bookshelf by vibes rather than any recognized cataloging system. Marcus had installed security features on my laptop and phone, his way of showing care. New Haven isn't Berkeley, Rachel had warned as they prepared to leave. You'll need new friends who get your particular brand of intensity. I'm not intense, I'd protested. They'd laughed in perfect unison, the synchronicity of people who knew me too well. The apartment was quiet now, just me and my thoughts as I organized my materials for the upcoming semester. A knock at the door interrupted my concentration, unusual since I knew almost no one in New Haven yet. Through the peephole, I saw Tyler shuffling nervously in the hallway. I pulled the door open in surprise. "Surprise," he said awkwardly, holding up a plant in a ceramic pot. "Housewarming gift. It's supposedly impossible to kill, which seemed appropriate for someone with your schedule." "Tyler," I managed, genuinely shocked. "What are you doing here? How did you find my address?" "Mom had it," he admitted. "I should have called first, but I was afraid you might say no." I stepped aside to let him in, noting the expensive luggage by his feet. "Are you staying somewhere nearby?" "Hotel downtown," he said, looking around my apartment with interest. "This is nice. Good light." The small talk felt bizarre given everything that had happened. We stood in uncomfortable silence until both speaking at once. "I left the firm. How's everyone?" We both stopped, then laughed, breaking the tension. "You first," I offered. Tyler set the plant down on my coffee table and sank onto my couch. "I left the firm. And Chicago. I'm actually moving to Boston next week. Accepted a position with an investment advisory firm that specializes in ethical investing. Wow, I said, genuinely impressed. That's a big change. Yeah, well, he shrugged. Turns out working for Dad lost its appeal once I understood what I was really participating in. He met my eyes directly. You were right, Nat. About all of it. I sat beside him, processing this development. How did he take your resignation? About as well as you'd expect. Accusations of betrayal, reminders of all he's done for me, threats about my future in the industry. Tyler's smile was tinged with sadness. The usual Richards family warmth.
And Mom.
His expression softened. That's the other news. They're separating. Though surprised by the speed of this development, I wasn't shocked by the fact itself. Her decision or his? Mutual, supposedly, but it was Mom who moved out. She's staying with Aunt Patricia for now, looking for her own place. He hesitated.
She's different, Nat.
It's like watching someone wake up from a long sleep. Last week she mentioned taking art classes again. The image of my mother returning to her long-abandoned passion brought unexpected tears to my eyes. She wanted to call you, Tyler continued. But she's afraid you're still angry with her for not protecting you from Dad all these years. I was never angry with Mom, I clarified. Disappointed, maybe. Sad for her, definitely. But not angry. You should tell her that, he suggested gently. She could use the support right now. We talked for hours, filling in the gaps of the past 3 months. Tyler described the implosion at home after the graduation dinner, how James had initially sided completely with our father, but had slowly begun asking his own questions as more details emerged. How our father had negotiated a strategic departure from the firm to prevent any investigation that might be triggered by sudden resignation. How extended family had begun taking sides in a division that seemed to be growing rather than healing. It's like watching a carefully built house of cards collapse in slow motion, Tyler observed. It was always going to collapse eventually, I pointed out. Houses of cards aren't meant to be permanent structures. He nodded thoughtfully. I keep thinking about those families, the ones from the settlements. I looked them up, you know. The Taylors eventually recovered financially, but Mrs. Morrison still struggles after her husband's death. The Guzman's daughter never finished college. The weight of these consequences hung between us. Collateral damage from our family's pursuit of success at any cost. That's why I chose Boston, Tyler continued. The firm I'm joining has a foundation that provides financial education and assistance to families affected by predatory investment practices. It's not atonement, exactly, but it's a start. Pride for my brother swelled unexpectedly. That sounds perfect for you, Ty. What about you? He asked. Any regrets about how everything went down? I considered the question carefully. I regret the public nature of it. That wasn't my intention. But the truth coming out?
No.
That needed to happen for all of us. Before leaving, Tyler handed me an envelope. From Mom. She wanted me to give this to you in person. Inside was a check for a substantial amount and a handwritten note. This is from my personal savings. Money that is truly mine to give. I should have supported you from the beginning. This doesn't make up for the past, but perhaps it can help with your future. All my love, Mom. The gesture touched me deeply, not for the financial support, but for what it represented. My mother reclaiming her autonomy, one decision at a time. As summer transitioned to fall, other pieces began falling into place. James finally called after months of silence. I'm still processing everything, he admitted, his voice lacking its usual confidence. But I miss my sister. We agreed to take small steps toward rebuilding our relationship, occasional calls, honest conversations, no expectations of immediate resolution. My mother's transformation continued. She found a small apartment in Chicago's Arts District, began taking painting classes, and even started therapy. All things that would have been unthinkable in her previous life as Mrs. Matthew Richards. I'm learning who Diana is, she told me during one of our weekly calls. It's terrifying and exhilarating. I understood exactly what she meant. I was doing the same thing at Yale, discovering who Natalie Richards was when defined by her own choices rather than in opposition to her father's expectations. Professor Harrington's corporate accountability seminar became the highlight of my academic experience. During one discussion about whistleblowers and family businesses, she kept me after class. "You bring a unique perspective to these discussions," she observed. "Personal experience, perhaps?" I hesitated before acknowledging the truth. "My family situation is complicated." She nodded understanding. The most valuable legal minds often emerge from complicated backgrounds. They understand the gray areas where others see only black and white. As for my father, the silence between us remained complete. I heard updates through my mother and brothers, his new consulting position, his smaller apartment, his ongoing insistence that he had merely done what any smart businessman would have done during financial crisis. I didn't expect an apology or acknowledgement. Some people are incapable of that kind of self-reflection. But his absence from my life no longer felt like a punishment. It felt like space to grow. During my first law school study break, I met Rachel for coffee when she was in New York for a conference. "You seem different," she observed, studying me over her latte. "More settled." "I feel lighter," I admitted. "Like I've been carrying this secret weight for years, and now it's gone." "Do you regret exposing your dad?" she asked directly, always one to cut to the heart of things. "No," I said without hesitation. "But I'm not interested in further exposure either. What matters now is moving forward with integrity." That became my guiding principle as I built my new life, moving forward with integrity. Not perfection, not the appearance of success, but genuine integrity in all my choices. Standing up to my father hadn't been about revenge. It had been about refusing to participate in a family system built on deception. The aftermath had been messy and painful, but also necessary and ultimately healing. My family was forever changed, fragmented in some ways, but also more authentic than it had ever been. My mother was discovering her voice. Tyler was aligning his career with his values. Even James was asking questions he'd never dared ask before. As for me, I was exactly where I belonged, pursuing a path that felt true to my values rather than imposed by someone else's expectations. The journey hadn't been what any of us expected, but perhaps that was the point. Real growth rarely follows the carefully planned paths we envision. Sometimes it requires disruption, painful truths, and the courage to stand firmly in your own story, even when that means revealing secrets others would prefer to keep buried. I've come to believe that family isn't defined by silence and compliance, but by truth and mutual respect. Sometimes building a genuine connection requires dismantling the false structures first. It's messy and painful, but ultimately worth it. Have you ever had to choose between keeping a painful family secret and standing in your truth? What would you have done in my situation? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more about my journey through law school and beyond. And if you know someone who's struggling with family expectations, consider sharing this video. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in these battles makes all the difference. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that your worth isn't determined by others' expectations of you. It comes from being true to yourself, even when that's the hardest path.